Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We from group 2 would like to telling about the Saxon Invasion, but before that, we would like to introduce ourselves. My name is Aulia Putri, and there are Tabdilah, Marjan, Wafda, and Kresna Mahardika. So, let's go to the material.
The first of all, the invaders. The wealth of Britain by the 4th century, the result of its mild climate and centuries of peace, was a temptation to the greedy. At first, the Germanic tribes only raided Britain, but after AD 430 they began to settle. The newcomers were well-liked and illiterate. We owe, we owe our knowledge of this period mainly to an English monk named Bede. Bede tells us that the invaders come from three powerful Germanic tribes, the Saxons, Angles, and Jutes. The Jutes settled mainly in Kent and along the south coast and were soon considered no different from the Angles and Saxons. The Angles settled in the east and also in the North Midlands, while the Saxons settled between the Jutes and the Angles in a band of land from the Downs east to westward. The Anglo-Saxon migration gave the larger part of Britain its new name, England, the land of the angels. The strength of Anglo-Saxon culture is obvious even today. Days of the week were named after Germanic gods. Take it meant Tuesday, Odin, Wednesday, Thor, Thursday, Friday. You place names everywhere on the map. The first of these show that the early Saxon village, like the Celtic ones, were family village. The ending the ending ing mean folk or family. Last reading is the place of the family of Rhoda. Hastings of the family of Hasta. Ham means farm, town means settlement, Birmingham, Nottingham, or Southampton. For example, a Saxon place names because the Anglo-Saxon kings often established settlement. Kingston is a frequent place name. The Anglo-Saxon established a number of kingdoms, some of which still exist in country original names to this day. Essex, East Saxon, Sussex, Saxon, West Saxon, Middlesex, probably a kingdom of Middle Saxon. East Anglia, East Angles. By the middle of the 7th century, the three largest kingdoms, those of Northumbria, Mercia, and Wessex, were the most powerful. The power of Francia did not survive after Alpa's death. At that time, a king's power depended on the personal loyalty of his followers. After his death, the next king had to work hard to rebuild these personal feelings of loyalty. Most people still believe, as the king had done, that a man's first duty was to his own family. However, things things were changing. The Saxon kings began to replace loyalty to family with loyalty to lord and king. P. Government and society. The Saxon created institution which made the English state strong for next 500 years. One of these institutions was the King's Council called the Witan. The Witan probably grew out of informal group of senior warriors and chairmen to whom kings like Offa had turned for advice or support in difficult matters. By the 10th century, the Witan was a formal body, issuing laws and charters. It was not at all democratic, and the king could decide to ignore the Witan's advice, but he knew that it might be dangerous to do so. Without its support, the king's own authority was in danger. The Witan established a system which remained an important part of the king's method of government. Even today, the king or queen has a privy council, a group of advisors on the affairs of state. The Saxons divided the land into new administrative areas based on shires or countries. In 1974, the countries were reorganized, but the new system is very like the old one. Over each shire was appointed a sheriff. The king's local administration in time his name becomes shortened to sheriff. Anglo-Saxon technology changed the shape of English agriculture. The Celts had kept small, square fields, which were well suited to the light plowed use, though either by an animal or two people. The Saxons settled previously unfarmed areas. They cut down many forest areas in valleys to farm the richer lowland soil, and they began to drain to wetland. As a result, almost all the villages which appear on 18th century maps already exist the by the 11th century. In each district was a man or a large house. This this was a simple building where local villagers come to pay taxes, where justice was administered. At first, the lord or aldermen were simply local officials, but by the beginning of the 11th century they were warlords, and were often called by a new Danish name, Ilbert words, elder, elder name and earl remain with us today. Elder, eldermen, eldermen are elected officer in local government, and elves are high-ranking nobles. It was the beginning of a class system, made up of king, lord, soldiers, and workers on the land. One other important class developed during the Saxon period, the men of learning. This came from the Christian church.
C. Christianity, the partnership of church and state. We cannot know how or when Christianity first reached Britain, but it was certainly well before Christianity was accepted by the Roman Emperor Constantine in the early 4th century AD. In the last 100 years of Roman government, Christianity became firmly established across Britain, both in Roman-controlled areas and beyond. However, the Anglo-Saxons belonged to an older Germanic religion, and they drove the Celts into the west and north. In the Celtic areas, Christianity continued to spread, bringing paganism to an end. In 597, Rob Corrigan, the great saint among Augustine, re-established Christianity in England. He went to Canterbury, the capital of the King of Kent. He did so because the king's wife came from Europe and was already Christian. Augustine became the first Archbishop of Canterbury in 601. He was very successful. Several ruling families in England accepted Christianity. The Celtic Church, which brought the Christianity to the ordinary people of Britain. The competition between the Celtic and Roman churches reached a crisis because they disagreed over the date of Easter. In 663, at the Synod meeting, of which the King of Northumbria decided to support the Roman Church, the Celtic Church retreated as Rome extended its authority over all Christians, even in Celtic parts of the island.
England had become Christian very quickly. By 660, only Sussex and the Isle of Wight had not accepted the new faith. 20 years later, English teachers returned to the land from which the Anglo-Saxons had come, bringing Christianity to much of Germany. Saxon kings helped the church to grow, but the church also increased the power of kings. There were other ways in which the church increased the power of the English state. It established monasteries or minsters, for example, Westminster, which were places of learning and education. These monasteries trained the men who could read and write so that they had the necessary skill for the growth of royal and church authority. The king who made most use of the church was Alfred, the Great king who ruled Wessex from 871 to 899. He used the literate men of the church to help establish a system of law
to educate the people and to write down important matters. During the next 100 years, laws were made on a large number of matters. By the 11th century, royal authority probably went wider and deeper in England than in any other European country. This process gave power into the hands of those who could read and write. And in this way, class divisions were increased. The power of landlords, who had been given land by the king, was increased because their names were written down. Peasants who could neither read nor write could lose their traditional rights to their land because their rights were not registered. The Anglo-Saxon kings also preferred the Roman courage to the Celtic courage for economic reasons. Anglo-Saxon England became well known in Europe for its exports of woolen goods, cheese, hunting dogs, pottery, and metal goods. It imported wine, fish pepper, jewelry, and well-made pottery. The Vikings. Towards the end of the 8th century, new riders were tempted by Britain's wealth. These were the Vikings, a word which probably means either pirates or the people of the sea inlets, as they came from Norway and Denmark. Like the Anglo-Saxons, they only raided at first. They bring courage and monasteries along the east, north, and west coast of Britain and Ireland. London was itself raided in 842. In 865, the Vikings invaded Britain once it was clear that the quarreling Anglo-Saxon kingdoms could not keep them out. This time, they came to conquer and to settle. The Vikings quickly accepted Christianity and did not disturb the local population. By 875, only King Alfred in the west of Wessex held out against the Vikings, who had already taken most of England. After some serious defeats, Alfred won a decisive battle in 878, and 8 years later he captured London. He was strong enough to make a treaty with the Vikings. Viking rule was recognized in the east and north of England. It was called the Danelaw, the land where the law of the Danes ruled. In the rest of the country, Alfred was recognized as king. During his struggle against the Danes, he had built walled settlements to keep them out. These were called burghs. They become prosperous market towns, and the word, now usually spelled proof, is one of the commonest endings to place names, as well as the name of the unit of municipal or own administration today.
Who should be king? By 950, England seemed rich and peaceful again after the troubles of the Viking invasion. But soon afterwards, the Danish Viking started raiding westward the Saxon king. Ezra decided to raid the Vikings to stay away. To find the money, he set a tax on all his people, called Dangerous or Danish money. It was the beginning of a regular tax system of the people which would provide the money for armies. The effects of this tax were most heavily felt by the ordinary villagers because they had to provide enough money for their village landlord to pay Daniel. When Ezra died, Kenneth, the leader of Danish Viking, controlled much of England. He became king for simple reason that the royal council, the Witan, and everyone else feared disorder. Rule by a Danish king was far better than rule by no one at all. Edward only lived until 1066, when he died without an obvious heir. Harold, whom the Witten chose to be the next King of England. Harold had already shown his bravery and ability. Harold was faced by two dangers, one in the south and one in the north. The Danish Vikings had not given up their claim to the English throne. In 1066, Harold had to march north into Yorkshire to defeat the Danes. No sooner had he defeated them than he learned that William had landed in England with an army. But William marched to London, which quickly gave in when he began to burn villages outside the city. He was crowned King of England and in Edward's new Church of Westminster Abbey on Christmas Day, 1066. A new period had begun. So it's from us. Thanks for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.